Is it going, everyone? Today we have the top 10 skate shoes of the 1980s. And do you ever wonder who makes these lists? Like, fool, when were you born? Did you really skate in these? I don't believe you. But rest assured, I'm old, ancient. I'm a dinosaur, fool. An old grumpy dirtbag. Anyhow, I've skated in a ton of these sneakers, and all I can do is speak from my experience. You guys can leave me your favorites in the comments down below. Alright? Thank you. Now with this list, it's kind of a combination between my personal faves and like the consensus of like what everyone thinks, what everyone likes, obviously. God, I can't speak today. So let's get to it. 10-1 with some honorable mentions. Number 10, the 1922 Chuck Taylor AllStar. Now on my top sneakers of all time list, these might get the number 1 spot. But as far as skate shoes in the 1980s, these get the number 10. This shoe goes way back. In 1921, Converse hired Chuck Taylor as a salesman to promote their non-skids basketball shoe they had created in 1917. Within a year of being at Converse, they had accepted his improvements for the shoe, like a more stable sole, better flexibility, and a patch for ankle support. After his signature was added to the patch, they became the Chuck Taylor All-Stars that we see today, pretty much unchanged aesthetically. It reached its peak popularity in the 1950s amongst athletes, but by the 1970s, Converse was in financial trouble, and the shoe was pretty much culturally dead. Athletes had switched to leather uppers and cup sole shoes. You people with your modern Chucks made by Nike will never know what us old fools had to deal with. Nike's made a lot of improvements today. They're much more comfortable. You would hate it if you got stuck having to actually walk in a block of the 1980s Chucks. They were cheap, readily available, so they got skated in a lot. The reason they made number 10 instead of higher is because they killed my feet, and the thin canvas upper was done with a quickness after a few ollies. You would have ollie holes in your socks, keep going, and there will be blood. Coming in at number 9, the 1973 Nike Blazer. Now I consulted with photographer Dave Swift on this one because the shoe was popular in the early 80s before my time in skating. It's a shoe that's gone through different iterations throughout its lifespan, and as we know today, continues to be released to the skate and regular markets. But Neil Blender wore them, so that's probably what I think of when I see them. More comfortable than 80s Chucks, that's a given, so they get this spot. Number 8, the Vision Suede from 1987, or 86, I'm not really sure what year they released. Now, when I first started skating, Vision was huge. It was a powerhouse in the skateboard industry. And while Vision streetwear eventually went down a suspect route, they had gone, so I was about it for a minute. I definitely had a couple suede pairs of the Vision Suede and a black leather pair as well that I liked. Vision streetwears were blessing the feet of some of the best skaters, but the glory was pretty short-lived as other shoe companies stepped up. Vision's following shoe offerings weren't as popular, the landscape of skateboarding changed, but for a brief period, these were a solid choice to skate in, no doubt. Number 7, one of my personal faves, 1987's Nike Delta Force. This is one that won't be on many people's lists, but I had a red and white pair and a green and white pair. They were plush and comfortable, the leather was top notch, nice and buttery, none of that stiff-ish. Now they have done some Nike SB low retros of this, but never the high, I don't think. Other Nike models like the Dunk get more love, but the comfort and leather on these were better back then. Dunks were a simpler construction, and they do look better with the full color uppers, no doubt. But if you wore these, you know. Number 6, from 1988, the Airwalk Prototype. The shoe was stiff and had its issues, but was pretty much ubiquitous on the feet of anyone that skated at the time, it seems. I skated plenty of them, and while the run was short-lived and the quality and comfort was questionable compared to athletic brands, they were ours, a shoe only skateboarders wore, made for us, at a time when skateboarding was unpopular. And that's why they get the number 6 spot. Number 5 from 1989, the Vans Caballero. Now this is the first Vans Pro Model shoe, along with the AEtniesnadas, the first Pro Model shoe in skateboarding history. Many just look at it as the predecessor to the more popular half cab, but I see it as a legend like the shoe's namesake, Steve Caballero. Number 4 from 1989, the AEtniesnadas model. Now, this shoe made my other list as well because I have a personal attachment to it. It was definitely relevant in the 90s since it came out in the late 80s, but it belongs on this list as well, so I included it. Get over it. I really wanted to get on Etnies, and luckily I was able to at this time. So my feelings about this shoe are definitely biased, as I said. In the moment, you couldn't really tell me about any other shoe, and these definitely had their time in the spotlight in skateboarding. I will admit the rubber panels don't age so well. At least they weren't covered in rubber and plastic like some Airwalks, eh? Now some of this footage is from 1989, some of it is from 1990, but it's me skating in the AEtniesnadas. Again, I love this shoe. Number 3 from 1985, the Air Jordan 1. Not only the shoe everyone wanted in the mid-80s in popular culture, but a shoe all the pros wore as well, so a coveted shoe to skate in if you could actually afford it. The most talked about sneaker of all time, so I don't really need to say anything else. Coming in at number 2, the 1989 Airwalk 500 and 600. Amazing memories in this shoe right here. Many in skateboarding, along with me, associate it with Matt Hensley. It's a mid version of the 600, which belongs here beside it on this list. Finally, Airwalk gave us a lower shoe. Peace out to the bulky, stiff high tops. Things had never looked better at Airwalk. Yeah, they were covered with rubber and plastic pieces still, but way lighter than the highs, so we ate it up. Yeah, the Jordan from '85 was higher quality. Yes, it still stands today. Yes, many skate shoes copied it, but Nike wasn't making skate shoes for us. Airwalk was. All skate shops carried these, and most skateboarders had a pair and could afford it. So, for those reasons, they rank higher on my 80s skate shoe list. Now for some honorable mentions. 1980, I don't know what, the Alessi Assist, really popular with the Santa Monica Airlines skate team, Jim Thiebaud, Nadas, so everybody loved these. 1985, the Nike Dunk. A lot of people are gonna hate on me for not putting them on the regular list, probably because they're released today a lot and coveted, but back then, not everyone was wearing Dunks to skate in. If you could find them, you would skate in them, just like any other Nike basketball shoe. But they weren't super popular after '85 in skateboarding, just because they weren't around. 1985, the Nike Terminator. Now, I really like this shoe. It came out with the Dunk, just like that. Everyone scooped them off the sale rack if they could. Some people could get them at full price. 1980, I don't know what, the New Balance 480 and 590. Two New Balance basketball shoes I love skating in. They're pretty much like all the other basketball shoes. Leather uppers, nice leather uppers actually. Cup sole, perfect. 1986's Adidas Rivalry and 1987's Adidas Attitude. Two shoes I love skating in, but you can't include everything on the list. 1969, the Adidas Superstar. Now definitely people were skating in the shell toes in the 80s, but they just weren't as popular as other shoes. That's why they didn't make the main list. 1989's Airwalk 540. I love this shoe. I had plenty of them, skated in them, but again, not everything can make the list, so they had to get an honorable mention. (1988) or 1989, the Airwalk 620. (1976's Converse Pro Leather). It's the shoe Dr. J wore. It's a basic leather upper and cup sole. Good for skating. Can't go wrong even today. In 1986, the Converse Weapon. It was a more bulky mid-80s basketball shoe, but I saw plenty of people skating in it back then. Now last one on the honorable mentions list. A lot more could have made it, but it's the 1984 Puma Ralph Sampson Majesty. Alright, the number one spot, the 1978 Vans Style 38 Skate High. Now, I only had one pair of these when I first started skating, but that doesn't take away from the fact they were consistently released and skated in all through the 80s. And there wasn't another model that did that in the decade, especially not from a brand that caters to skating. This shoe has gone non-stop until present day, and young me could have never imagined people that didn't skate wearing these back in the day, but the future is now, and that's actually happened. Now when making a list like this, one must weigh the truth versus nostalgia. These weren't my favorite skate shoes in the 80s, but the truth remains. I like skating in my Nike's Airwalks and Nadas shoes better, but Nike didn't make those shoes for us. Airwalks and Nadas shoes didn't age as well, so despite my likes and nostalgia, it gets the number one spot. Hope you guys enjoyed my list. Till next time, peace.